My daughter said, "Don't come to my graduation." So I sent her a surprise she'll never forget. My name is Linda Thompson, and I am 55 years old. The words my daughter Sarah spoke over the phone that Tuesday evening in April hit me like a physical blow to my chest. "Mom, please don't come to my graduation. I don't want you there." The line went silent except for my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Before I tell you about the surprise I sent her that changed everything, drop a like and subscribe to hear how a mother's love found a way to bridge an impossible gap. Sarah had always been my little star. From the moment she took her first steps in our modest living room in Columbus, Ohio, I knew she was destined for greatness. While other toddlers stumbled and fell, Sarah moved with purpose and determination that seemed impossible for someone so small. Her father David and I would watch in amazement as our 18-month-old daughter attempted complex tasks with a focus that rivaled adults. Even as a baby, Sarah displayed unusual intelligence that set her apart from other children. She spoke her first words at 8 months and was forming complete sentences before her first birthday. While other parents celebrated basic milestones, we found ourselves constantly amazed by Sarah's rapid development and insatiable curiosity about the world around her. Her preschool teachers noticed immediately that Sarah was different from her classmates. While 3-year-olds typically struggled with basic counting, Sarah was solving simple addition problems and reading picture books independently. The daycare director, Mrs. Henderson, suggested we consider having Sarah evaluated for gifted programs even before kindergarten. Elementary school confirmed what we had suspected about Sarah's exceptional mind. While her classmates struggled with basic addition, Sarah was solving multiplication problems during her free time. Her second-grade teacher, Mrs. Patterson, requested a parent conference not because Sarah was misbehaving, but because she needed more challenging material to keep her engaged. Mrs. Patterson was a veteran educator with 30 years of experience, but she admitted that Sarah was the most intellectually advanced child she had ever encountered. During our meeting, she showed us Sarah's work samples that demonstrated mathematical reasoning typically seen in middle school students. The gap between Sarah's abilities and her age-appropriate curriculum was becoming impossible to ignore. The academic acceleration began that year when Sarah was moved to 3rd-grade mathematics, while remaining with her age group for other subjects. The arrangement required careful coordination between teachers and constant communication between the school and our home. David and I took turns helping with homework that often surpassed our own educational backgrounds. I remember sitting at our kitchen table night after night, trying to help Sarah with mathematics problems that challenged my own understanding. David, who had always been good with numbers from his work at the hardware store, found himself researching concepts online to stay ahead of Sarah's advancing curriculum. We were proud, but also intimidated by her rapid intellectual growth. By 4th grade, Sarah was participating in state-level academic competitions and winning recognition that brought pride to our entire school district. Local newspapers featured articles about the brilliant young student who could solve algebra problems while her classmates were still mastering long division. The attention was thrilling, but it also marked the beginning of changes that would strain our family in ways I never anticipated. The local recognition opened doors to opportunities we had never imagined possible for a child from our modest background. Sarah was invited to participate in summer enrichment programs at Ohio State University, where she took courses alongside high school students while still in elementary school. The commute required David or me to drive 2 hours each way, 3 times per week, but seeing Sarah's excitement made every mile worthwhile. These early experiences with advanced academic environments began shaping Sarah's perspective about intellectual achievement and social expectations in ways we did not fully understand at the time. She started using vocabulary and concepts that impressed adults, but created distance from children her own age. Birthday parties with neighborhood kids became increasingly uncomfortable, as Sarah struggled to engage with activities she considered intellectually beneath her developing capabilities. I noticed the first signs of social isolation during a birthday party for our neighbor's daughter, when Sarah was 9 years old. While other children played traditional party games with enthusiasm, Sarah sat apart reading a book about astronomy she had brought along. When other parents commented on her advanced reading level, Sarah seemed pleased by the attention, but made no effort to join the group activities. The pattern became more pronounced during elementary school social events. Sarah would participate when required, but showed little genuine interest in forming friendships with children who did not share her intellectual curiosity. Her teachers expressed concern about her social development, but their suggestions for encouraging peer interaction seemed to conflict with supporting her academic advancement. Middle school brought new challenges as Sarah's intellectual gifts became more pronounced, and her social development began lagging behind her academic achievements. While she excelled in advanced mathematics and science courses designed for high school students, she struggled to connect with peers who shared few of her interests or intellectual curiosity. The transition to middle school was particularly difficult because Sarah was academically ready for high school coursework, but emotionally still very much a 12-year-old child. The school district created an individualized program that allowed her to take advanced classes while receiving support for social and emotional development through regular counseling sessions. The isolation began manifesting in subtle behavioral changes that concerned David and me more than we initially admitted to each other. Sarah became increasingly critical of family conversations she deemed intellectually inferior. Dinner discussions about my work as a dental hygienist or David's job managing a local hardware store were met with eye rolls and sighs that suggested we were somehow disappointing her with our ordinary concerns. Family dinners, which had once been opportunities for sharing daily experiences and staying connected, became tense affairs where Sarah's impatience with our conversation topics was barely concealed. She would finish eating quickly and ask to be excused to work on homework, or read books that were far beyond our ability to understand or discuss meaningfully. Her teachers assured us that intellectual precocity often created social challenges, but they recommended we continue supporting her academic advancement while encouraging participation in age-appropriate activities. The balance proved nearly impossible to maintain, as Sarah's interests diverged increasingly from typical teenage pursuits. Dr. Martinez, the school psychologist, explained that gifted children often experienced isolation and difficulty relating to family members who could not match their intellectual development. She suggested family counseling to help us navigate the challenges of raising an exceptionally bright child while maintaining healthy relationships. Family movie nights became battles over content that Sarah considered too simplistic or intellectually vacant. She preferred documentaries about quantum physics or historical analyses that left David and me struggling to contribute meaningful commentary. Our daughter was becoming a stranger whose interests and perspectives we could barely comprehend. The documentaries Sarah chose were often several hours long and required background knowledge we simply did not possess. When we tried to ask questions or express interest, she would become frustrated with our lack of understanding and suggest we watch something else. These interactions left all of us feeling disconnected and disappointed. High school acceleration meant Sarah was taking college-level courses by age 15, while trying to navigate typical teenage social dynamics with classmates 2 years older. The academic pressure was immense, but she thrived on challenges that would have overwhelmed most students her age. Her grades remained perfect, but her relationship with family became increasingly strained. The high school environment was particularly challenging because Sarah was intellectually ready for college-level work, but physically and socially still very much an adolescent. Her teachers worked hard to create appropriate challenges, while helping her develop the social skills necessary for success in academic environments with older students. The transformation was gradual, but unmistakable. The child who had once shared every detail of her day with us became secretive and distant. Phone calls with teachers revealed that Sarah was excelling academically, but showing signs of social anxiety and difficulty forming friendships with older classmates who viewed her as an oddity, despite her intellectual contributions. Parent-teacher conferences became sessions where we learned more about our daughter from strangers than we knew from daily interaction. Her biology teacher described Sarah's innovative approach to research projects, while her English teacher praised her sophisticated literary analysis. Meanwhile, at home, she barely spoke during dinner and spent most evenings isolated in her room. The disconnect between Sarah's public academic success and her private emotional struggles became increasingly apparent as she progressed through high school. Teachers described a confident, articulate student who contributed meaningfully to class discussions, while at home, we saw a teenager who seemed increasingly unhappy and isolated from family relationships. The first major conflict occurred during Sarah's junior year, when she announced her intention to graduate early and attend an Ivy League university 3 states away. David and I supported her academic ambitions, but worried about her emotional readiness for such independence at 17 years old. Our concerns were dismissed as evidence of our inability to understand her exceptional capabilities. Sarah viewed our parental caution as attempts to limit her potential, rather than genuine worry about her well-being. The gap between her intellectual maturity and our perceived limitations became a source of constant tension that poisoned family interactions. Every conversation about college plans became an argument about trust and understanding. Sarah accused us of holding her back while we tried to express love and concern for her emotional development. The discussions ended with slammed doors and days of silent treatment that left David and me feeling helpless and excluded from major decisions about our daughter's future. The arguments were particularly painful because they revealed how little Sarah valued our opinions or trusted our judgment about her life. She had reached conclusions about her readiness for college independence without meaningful consultation with the people who had supported her development from birth. College applications required extensive travel for interviews and campus visits that stretched our family budget considerably. David and I worked overtime to fund these opportunities, sacrificing our own needs to support Sarah's educational dreams. I took on additional hours at the dental office while David managed inventory at the hardware store during weekends and evenings. The financial strain was significant, but her happiness and success felt worth any sacrifice. We emptied our vacation fund, postponed home repairs, and delayed replacing our aging car to ensure Sarah could visit every university that expressed interest in her exceptional academic record. The credit card bills mounted as we funded travel expenses for campus visits across multiple states. Each college visit felt like a preview of our future irrelevance in Sarah's life. She would return from campus tours, speaking excitedly about professors and research opportunities, while showing minimal interest in sharing the experience with family who had made her participation possible. The enthusiasm she showed for her potential college experiences was never matched by appreciation for our support. The campus visits also highlighted the vast difference between Sarah's intellectual world and our everyday reality. She would describe conversations with professors about research opportunities and academic programs using terminology we could not understand or contribute to meaningfully. These discussions made us feel like outsiders to our own daughter's most important life decisions. Sarah's acceptance to Harvard with a partial scholarship was the proudest moment of my life as a mother. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon in March, and I immediately called David at work to share the incredible news. Our daughter would attend one of the world's most prestigious universities, fulfilling dreams we had nurtured since her earliest academic achievements. The acceptance letter was beautiful, printed on heavy paper with Harvard's official seal, and represented years of preparation and sacrifice from our entire family. I read it multiple times, trying to comprehend that our daughter had achieved something so extraordinary that it seemed almost impossible to believe. The celebration was brief and somewhat awkward. Sarah's focus immediately shifted to preparation for her transition to college life, leaving little time for family bonding or reflection on the journey that had brought us to this moment. Her excitement was infectious, but it also highlighted how eager she was to leave our small Ohio town and the family she had apparently outgrown. We planned a small celebration dinner at Sarah's favorite restaurant, but the evening felt more like a business meeting than a family celebration. Sarah spent most of the meal discussing dormitory assignments and course catalogs, rather than acknowledging the support that had made her achievement possible. The dinner conversation focused entirely on her future plans, with no recognition of the family foundation that had enabled her success. Summer before college was filled with shopping trips, orientation materials, and endless discussions about course selection and career planning. Sarah approached these preparations with characteristic intensity, researching every detail and preparing for challenges she anticipated facing at Harvard. The summer felt like extended preparation for her departure, rather than quality time with family before a major transition. Our relationship during this period felt more like that of a personal assistant and client, rather than mother and daughter. Sarah needed practical support for her transition, but emotional connection seemed unnecessary or even unwelcome. I told myself this was normal preparation anxiety and that our relationship would stabilize once she settled into college life. The shopping expeditions were particularly difficult because Sarah insisted on making all decisions independently, while expecting us to fund purchases we could barely afford. She dismissed our suggestions about budget considerations and seemed irritated when we expressed opinions about practical matters like bedding or clothing appropriate for New England winters. David and I found ourselves walking on eggshells, afraid to offer advice or express emotions that might trigger another argument about our inability to understand her sophisticated needs and preferences. The teenage daughter who had once sought our guidance now viewed our input as interference from people who could not comprehend her elevated circumstances. The goodbye at Harvard was more difficult for David and me than for Sarah. While we struggled with emotions about our only child leaving home, she was clearly ready to begin her independent life. The hug she gave me felt perfunctory rather than heartfelt, suggesting she viewed our parental role as essentially complete. The dormitory room was small but impressive, located in a building with history that predated our entire state. Sarah's roommate was a girl from Connecticut, whose family had attended Ivy League schools for generations. The contrast between their backgrounds was obvious, and seemed to embarrass Sarah in ways that hurt more than I expected. Driving home from Cambridge felt like returning from a funeral. David and I barely spoke during the 8-hour journey, both processing the reality that our primary role in Sarah's life had essentially ended. The house felt impossibly empty, despite being filled with reminders of her childhood and academic achievements that now seemed like artifacts from a different era. Freshman year brought infrequent phone calls and brief text messages that provided basic updates about classes and campus life. Sarah's academic performance remained exceptional, but her communication with family became increasingly minimal. When we did speak, conversations felt strained and formal, rather than the warm family connections I remembered from her childhood. The distance was not just geographical. Sarah's language and references increasingly reflected her new environment and social circle. She spoke about professors, classmates, and opportunities with enthusiasm she rarely showed for family updates or hometown news. I began feeling like an outsider to my own daughter's life, someone whose experiences and perspectives were no longer relevant to her daily reality. Her stories about Harvard life included details about classmates whose families owned multiple homes, traveled internationally for holidays, and had connections to influential people in politics and business. Sarah's tone when describing these relationships suggested she was impressed by their sophisticated backgrounds in ways that made our middle-class Ohio existence seem inadequate by comparison. Sophomore year brought even less communication, as Sarah became involved in research projects and academic organizations that consumed most of her time. Her brief holiday visits home felt like obligations rather than opportunities for family bonding. She seemed impatient with our questions about her studies and dismissive of our attempts to share news about our lives. The Christmas visit during sophomore year was particularly painful and marked a significant deterioration in our relationship. Sarah spent most of her time on her laptop, working on projects she claimed were too complex to explain to us. When David asked about her courses, she provided brief summaries that made it clear she considered our intellectual curiosity insufficient for detailed discussion. Neighborhood friends who stopped by to welcome Sarah home were treated with polite disinterest. She had nothing in common with young people who had remained in Columbus for community college or local jobs. The gap between her experiences and theirs had become a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge, and watching her interact with childhood friends felt like observing a stranger. Her former best friend Jessica, who had always looked up to Sarah's academic achievements, tried to share news about her nursing program at the local community college. Sarah's response was condescending and brief, clearly indicating that she considered Jessica's educational path inferior to her own Harvard experience. The conversation ended awkwardly, with Jessica looking hurt and confused. The pattern continued through junior year, with Sarah's achievements mounting impressively, while our relationship deteriorated steadily. She published research papers, received academic honors, and secured prestigious internships that showcased her exceptional capabilities. Each success felt like another step away from the family that had supported her journey from the beginning. Her research work involved collaborating with professors on projects that would influence policy decisions and academic understanding in her field. The opportunity to contribute to meaningful scholarship at such a young age was extraordinary, but sharing these achievements with family who could not fully comprehend their significance became increasingly frustrating for Sarah. My attempts to maintain connection through care packages, letters, and frequent calls were met with polite but distant responses. Sarah appreciated the practical support, but showed little interest in emotional connection or sharing details about her daily experiences beyond basic academic updates that felt like reports from a foreign country. The care packages I sent weekly included homemade cookies, local newspapers, and small gifts that reminded her of home. Sarah acknowledged receiving them, but never expressed genuine enthusiasm or gratitude. The packages felt like one-way communications from a mother desperate to maintain relevance in her daughter's expanding world, that no longer seemed to include space for family relationships. David and I began seeing a family counselor to help us understand how to maintain relationship with a child whose intellectual development had seemingly outpaced her emotional attachment to family. The sessions were helpful for processing our feelings, but offered limited solutions for bridging the growing gap with Sarah. Dr. Williams, our counselor, explained that academically gifted children often struggled with maintaining family connections while pursuing intellectual challenges that their relatives could not share or understand. The situation was common, but no less painful for parents who had sacrificed everything to support their child's exceptional potential without receiving recognition or appreciation. Senior year brought excitement about Sarah's plans for graduate school and career development alongside continued strain in family relationships. She had been accepted to multiple PhD programs and was considering opportunities that would likely take her even further from Ohio and the family connections we hoped to preserve. The graduate school application process was even more intense than undergraduate admissions, requiring research proposals, faculty interviews, and campus visits that Sarah managed entirely independently. Her competence in navigating these complex requirements was impressive, but highlighted how little she needed or wanted family involvement in major life decisions. Each acceptance letter that arrived felt like another confirmation that Sarah's future would take her even further from the family foundation that had made her success possible. Stanford, MIT, Yale, Princeton, universities whose names carried prestige we had only dreamed about when she was small. Yet each opportunity felt like a step toward permanent separation from our daughter. The Thanksgiving visit during senior year was particularly difficult and marked a turning point in our already strained relationship. Sarah spent most of her time working on applications and research, rather than engaging with family traditions or conversations. When she did participate, her contributions felt obligatory, rather than genuine expressions of interest in family life. I had spent weeks planning her favorite meal, decorating the house with autumn colors she had loved as a child, and coordinating visits with extended family who were eager to hear about her Harvard experiences. Instead of appreciation, Sarah seemed irritated by the effort and uncomfortable with the attention from relatives she now considered intellectually inferior. During dinner, my sister Karen asked Sarah about her classes, genuinely interested in understanding what she was studying. Sarah's response was condescending and filled with jargon that made it clear she had no intention of making her work accessible to family members. The conversation died quickly, leaving everyone uncomfortable and aware of the growing distance. Uncle Robert, who had helped fund some of Sarah's early academic competitions, tried to engage her in conversation about her future plans. Sarah's dismissive responses made it obvious that she viewed his questions as intrusive, rather than expressions of family pride and interest. The man who had once been her favorite relative was now treated like a stranger whose opinions held no value. Christmas was worse, representing what felt like the final breakdown of family relationships we had tried desperately to preserve. Sarah's impatience with family gatherings and hometown friends was barely concealed. She made comments about the intellectual limitations of our social circle and expressed frustration with having to explain her academic work to people she considered incapable of understanding its significance. The comments stung particularly because they included implicit criticism of David and me. We had supported her educational journey at considerable personal and financial cost, yet she seemed to view us as obstacles to her continued development, rather than partners in her success. The daughter we had nurtured had become someone who was embarrassed by our existence. During Christmas dinner, Sarah's cousin Michael, who was studying engineering at Ohio State, tried to discuss his coursework with her. Sarah's response was so condescending that it brought tears to his eyes and prompted my brother to ask her to apologize. Instead, Sarah left the table, claiming she had important work to complete, leaving the entire family uncomfortable and confused. Spring semester brought increased tension as graduation approached. Sarah's communication became even more infrequent, and her responses to our questions about graduation plans were evasive. When we asked about ticket allocation and ceremony details, she provided minimal information and seemed uncomfortable with our obvious excitement about attending. The conversations about graduation logistics were particularly frustrating because Sarah treated our questions as unreasonable intrusions rather than natural parental interest in her milestone achievement. She seemed to view our desire to attend as evidence of our failure to understand that her life had moved beyond the need for family celebration or recognition. When I asked about hotel reservations and travel arrangements, Sarah's responses were brief and unhelpful. She suggested we might be more comfortable watching a live stream of the ceremony rather than attending in person, though she framed this as concern for our convenience rather than acknowledgement of her preference for our absence. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday evening in April, 6 weeks before graduation. I had been looking forward to our weekly conversation, hoping to discuss final arrangements for what should have been one of the most important celebrations of our family's life together. Instead, Sarah's voice was cold and formal, as she delivered the devastating news that would shatter my heart and force me to confront the reality of how completely our relationship had deteriorated. She did not want us to attend her graduation ceremony. The explanation was brief and brutal. Our presence would be embarrassing given the sophisticated social and academic environment she now inhabited. She preferred to celebrate this milestone with people who understood and appreciated her achievements at their proper level, she explained with clinical detachment. The professors, classmates, and mentors who comprised her current social circle were more appropriate witnesses to her success than family members who could not comprehend the significance of her accomplishments. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes, but each word felt like a physical blow. Sarah's tone suggested this was a practical decision, rather than an emotional one, as though she was simply managing logistics, rather than excluding her parents from one of life's most significant celebrations. When I tried to express hurt and confusion, she became impatient and suggested I was being overly dramatic. Her dismissal of my emotional reaction was perhaps the most painful part of the entire conversation. The daughter I had raised to be empathetic and considerate had become someone who could deliver devastating news, without apparent concern for its impact on people who loved her unconditionally. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence trying to process what had just happened. The daughter I had nurtured, supported, and sacrificed for had essentially written us out of her life's biggest moment because she was embarrassed by our presence. The rejection felt like the culmination of years of growing distance and diminishing respect for family relationships. David's reaction was immediate anger, followed by profound sadness that mirrored my own emotional journey. We had invested everything in Sarah's education and development, believing we were building family bonds alongside academic achievements. Instead, our support had apparently enabled her to grow beyond us in ways that made our continued involvement unwelcome. The weeks following that phone call were among the most difficult of my adult life. I struggled with feelings of rejection, failure, and confusion about how our relationship had deteriorated so completely. Every sacrifice we had made for Sarah's education now felt like steps toward our own irrelevance in her life. Sleep became elusive as I replayed conversations and decisions from Sarah's childhood and adolescence, searching for moments when I might have prevented this outcome. Had we pushed too hard academically? Had we failed to maintain emotional connection while supporting intellectual development? The questions were endless and provided no comfort or clarity. David and I discussed various responses to Sarah's request during long, painful conversations that often ended in tears. We could ignore her wishes and attend graduation anyway, forcing a confrontation that might permanently damage our relationship. We could accept her decision and hope time would heal the wounds created by this rejection. Neither option felt satisfactory or likely to restore the loving relationship we had lost. The idea that would ultimately change everything came during a sleepless night 2 weeks after Sarah's devastating phone call. If she did not want us physically present at graduation, perhaps we could find another way to express our love and pride that she could not dismiss or ignore. The challenge was creating something meaningful enough to bridge the gap she had created while demonstrating the depth of our commitment to her well-being. My first thought was a letter expressing our feelings and hopes for reconciliation, but letters could be easily dismissed or discarded without reading. The gesture needed to be substantial enough to demand Sarah's attention, while demonstrating the depth of our love and commitment to her well-being, despite her painful rejection of our family relationships. The solution came while I was reviewing old photo albums, searching for evidence of happier times when Sarah valued family relationships and seemed to enjoy our company. The pictures told the story of a child who had once been deeply connected to family before academic achievement became her primary identity and source of validation. I began planning something unprecedented, a comprehensive celebration of Sarah's entire journey from birth to graduation that would honor both her achievements and the family foundation that had made them possible. The project would require significant time, money, and emotional investment, but felt like our last hope for reconnecting with our daughter. The centerpiece would be a professionally produced video documentary featuring interviews with teachers, coaches, and mentors who had influenced Sarah's development throughout her educational journey. The film would capture perspectives on her growth that she had never heard and demonstrate the network of support that had enabled her success from childhood through college. I spent the next 3 weeks tracking down contact information for people who had played significant roles in Sarah's life: elementary school teachers who had recognized her potential, middle school counselors who had helped navigate acceleration decisions, high school professors who had provided college-level instruction, and community members who had supported her competition travels. The response to my outreach was overwhelmingly positive and emotionally moving. Teachers remembered Sarah fondly and were eager to share memories of her exceptional capabilities and determination. Several offered insights about her development that provided new perspective on choices David and I had made during her educational journey. Mrs. Patterson, Sarah's second-grade teacher, who had first recommended academic acceleration, agreed to be interviewed for the documentary. Her memories of Sarah's early intellectual curiosity and determination were touching, and provided context for the remarkable young woman she had become. She spoke about Sarah's kindness toward struggling classmates and her willingness to help others despite her advanced abilities. Dr. Martinez, who had taught Sarah advanced mathematics in middle school, shared stories about her problem-solving approach and willingness to tackle challenges that intimidated older students. His perspective on her intellectual courage added depth to understanding her character development during crucial formative years. The high school guidance counselor who had helped coordinate Sarah's college applications provided insights about her maturity and focus during the stressful application process. Her recollections highlighted Sarah's determination and strategic thinking in pursuing her educational goals while managing the social challenges of academic acceleration. Each interview revealed aspects of Sarah's personality and development that David and I had witnessed, but never fully appreciated. The documentary was becoming a comprehensive portrait of exceptional talent, supported by community investment and family sacrifice that extended far beyond our immediate household. The technical production required hiring a professional videographer and editor to create something worthy of the subject matter. The expense was significant for our family budget, but felt appropriate given the importance of the project and our hopes for its impact on Sarah's perspective about family relationships and community support. The editing process took 2 weeks as we worked with the production team to create a narrative that honored Sarah's achievements while highlighting the network of support that had enabled her success. The final product was a 40-minute documentary that captured the essence of her journey from gifted child to Harvard graduate. The second component of our surprise was a scholarship fund established in Sarah's name at her elementary school to support other academically gifted students who might need financial assistance for educational opportunities. The fund would provide resources for testing, transportation to competitions, and enrichment programs that had been crucial to Sarah's development. Creating the scholarship required liquidating most of our retirement savings, but felt like an appropriate way to honor Sarah's achievements while helping other children access similar opportunities. The fund would be announced during the elementary school's graduation ceremony, creating a lasting legacy connected to Sarah's success. The final element was a bound collection of letters from family members, friends, and community members who wanted to express their pride in Sarah's achievements and share memories of her impact on their lives. The responses were heartfelt and numerous, creating a substantial volume of personal reflections on her journey. My own letter was the most difficult to write, requiring multiple drafts to achieve the right balance of emotion and restraint. I needed to express love and pride while acknowledging the pain her rejection had caused. The tone had to be supportive rather than accusatory, hoping to open dialogue rather than create additional conflict. David's contribution was equally challenging as he struggled to articulate feelings of hurt and confusion alongside genuine pride in Sarah's accomplishments. His letter focused on specific memories of her childhood determination and his hopes for her future happiness and success, regardless of family relationships. The package was completed 3 days before Sarah's graduation ceremony. The documentary was professionally duplicated and packaged with the scholarship announcement and letter collection in a presentation box that reflected the significance of its contents and our hopes for its impact. Shipping the surprise to Sarah's dorm required careful coordination to ensure delivery on graduation day. I wanted her to receive it at a moment when she would be reflecting on her achievements and considering her future. hopefully creating optimal conditions for emotional impact and reconsideration of family relationships. The tracking information showed the package was delivered to Sarah's dormitory on Saturday morning, the day of her graduation ceremony. I spent the day imagining her reaction to discovering the comprehensive celebration we had created despite her request that we not attend the ceremony that marked the culmination of her academic journey. What happened next would change everything between us forever.